Since the end of the Cold War in 1989, America has created about 51 million new jobs. I swear I checked this 3 times. Even I couldn't believe it. What's the score? Democrats 50, Republicans 1.
Stephanie, do the Democrats have a natural trust when it comes to the economy, given those figures?
You know, I mean, the economic cycle obviously has a lot to do with it. And even as we speak now, there's a big meeting of the great central bankers in Jackson Hole in Wyoming, where probably they'll be talking about things that could potentially affect the global economy, certainly affect the economic terrain of the election more than anything that happened here in Chicago this week. But I have not gone back and checked that a 4th time, those numbers, but I do know that President Clinton was incredibly proud of his record of job creation under his watch. I suspect if you started that number from the early 80s, you might get a slightly different picture. But you know, the Democrat administrations have been, in recent years, administrations where you saw relatively strong economic growth, certainly under the Clinton years. Those were boom years in retrospect, periods of low inflation as well as job creation. I think what's frustrated the Biden team is in the last few years, they feel like they have a lot of good things to say about the economy, certainly on the job creation front, but the legacy of inflation, which is still sitting in people's bills every week, even though the headline number has gone back down, I think they underestimated how much that would linger with voters, and we've seen that all over the world. And I think the trouble that you've had, and certainly this is something that Kamala Harris is struggling with, you know, in her North Carolina speech last week, where she started to lay out some economic proposals, you know, the first half of that speech was still sounding a bit like President Biden, sort of saying to people, you should feel better about the economy than you do. Listen to these great numbers. But she then pivoted to say, we know that people are still hurting. We know there are things to do. But I think they're going to have to tilt that balance even further over the next few weeks if they really want to speak to this sliver of undecided voters in places like Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and obviously, Leslie, undecideds include young people as well. And your reflection on the energy and the youth engagement at the DNC, what do you think that said?
Well, there is tremendous energy.
Leslie?
Tremendous energy amongst young voters. You know, the enthusiasm gap, what we saw when President Biden was the nominee running against Donald Trump, the enthusiasm, the interest in this election had really just gone through the floor. It was really quite a dire situation across the country, and especially for the Democrats, and that has really changed. And part of that is undoubtedly that 18 to 29-year-olds, that category that we measure as young voters, are very energized. The use of social media in this campaign is very sophisticated so far, and we can expect that mobilization to be significant. But you know, whether we are talking about the economy, inflation, job creation, none of it matters at the aggregate level. What matters is how it breaks down for young voters, and what matters especially is how it breaks down for those target voters in those swing states. And that's what the big play is going to have to be for.
Let's talk